So what I want to talk about is the different kinds of painting styles out there. Now, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of different ways to paint something or draw something. And what type of style you're going to use for what situation is going to be important to know. Now, there's lots of different scenarios in which you might need to paint a picture. Maybe you're illustrating a children's book. Maybe you're illustrating the cover for a novel. Maybe you're doing a comic book or trading cards or who knows what, any number of those things, right? And each of those different jobs are going to need a specific style or a specific need that has to be met. Now, let's go over some examples. Comic books, for example. Comic style is typically done in the same fashion where there's penciling and then inking on top of that, and then someone colors it, okay? And the reason they do that is because it's a relatively fast process, right? Inking makes it so that you don't have to fully render all of the shadows. You can just block everything in big dark shapes, and then the colorist can go in and add the color. Now, that doesn't mean that all comic books are inked or have that comic style, right? So it's not a hard, fast rule, clearly. There can be lots of different variation in between. Like I said, there's thousands of styles out there. Let's talk about children's books. Children's books typically are going to be really simple, usually pretty flat, cartoony, large shapes, bright colors, that sort of style of art. But that's not always true. Sometimes books have a really detailed rendered look to them, or sometimes they're painted in straight up oil painting, right? So it doesn't always hold the same. But my point is this: when you're painting in whatever project it is you're doing, make sure that you're thinking about your style consciously instead of just kind of letting it do whatever it wants, right? When it comes to doing a project, you want to make sure that what you're painting and the way you're painting is going to fit the need of your client or the project itself. Now, your style will come with time, and I'll talk about that in the next lecture, but just be aware of it, right? If you're doing a comic book and you're on a time crunch, it's not a good idea to go full render mode and do super photorealistic digital painting for a comic book because you probably won't have time to finish it, right? Or if you're doing let's say you're doing a portrait or you're doing concept art. Let's say you're doing some concept art for a video game, a super realistic, gory monster slash and hack video game. And the art you come up with is really cartoony. It's a bunch of big shapes. It's really flat, two-dimensional, looks like a cartoon. It's not really going to work. Doesn't mean that any of those art styles are wrong. It just means that it's not really applicable for the current situation. So just be aware of that. Figure out what it is you want to do, or if you have a specific project you're working on, figure out the style that it needs, and then head in that direction instead of just kind of letting things happen to you. So that's it for this lecture. I'll see you guys in the next one.